Welcome, everybody. You are tuning back into the Relationship Explorers podcast. I am your co-host, Tim.
And your boy, Shu.
So we're back here for another episode. We're looking forward to this one. So as you remember from last episode, this is a trilogy, if you will, about trust. So here's the scenario that we wanted to put before y'all today. Have you ever gotten to a place where you have this friend, or let's just say even your mate, and you finally feel like you can open up to them? And you open up and you say the thing, and immediately this wall of regret comes over you. I mean, you poured your heart out. You really told them how you felt and shared something that was deeply personal to you, admitted that something was actually hurting you. And instead of feeling closer to the person like you were thinking was going to happen, you felt exposed.
Yeah, probably because, well, it could be a few things, right? Maybe
Yeah.
they dismissed what you were talking about. And to make you feel small, sometimes people will do that little chuckle
Mm,
as if what you're saying doesn't really bear any weight. So
yeah.
I could see that, someone did that, that could come across in the wrong way,
Yeah.
or it could have something to do with them. And instead of just allowing you to express, they become defensive,
Yeah.
or they might, do one of these numbers and put it in the pocket and then pull it out a little bit later. Oh, you remember this?
Right.
Yeah. So I think most of us have been through a scenario similar to that, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so unfortunate because after that happens, it's not like you're going to just say out loud, I don't think I trust you anymore. No, it doesn't quite happen like that. It's more like this was the beginning and the end of me bringing anything real to you. And you kind of just immediately throw up this wall in order to not expose yourself again.
Yeah. And it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Why it's hard to open up to the people that we love, the people that we say are close to us, the
Yeah.
people that we trust.
Mm, that word is going to come up so much. So
Right.
I think to get this conversation started, we have to, I think, establish what are the major pillars that we're going to be talking about, or pillar within this episode of trust. And I think it will boil down to vulnerability when we're in this trust discussion, because vulnerability is a trust risk without a doubt.
Absolutely.
If you're vulnerable, or when you're vulnerable, it's very risky because you're handing your heart or something that's just very precious to you to someone else.
That's right. And then the way that they receive that or the way that they handle that, it teaches you whether it's safe or not.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
vulnerability is definitely a key component to the trust issue.
yeah, for sure. So let's just throw this question out there, bro. What, in your opinion, your thoughts, why is it so hard to open up?
Yeah, why is it hard to open up?
Yeah,
I think kind of like we talked about in our last episode, most people have elements of either privacy or secrecy that they want to maintain. So already having that sense of staying protected any type of exposure that opens us up can cause a person to feel reluctant and wanting to share. So I think just an underlying fear of exposing, whether it's a fault, a trait, something that you're obsessed with,
Yeah, yeah,
any of those things, a fear of exposing yourself could be a cause of that. Um,
yeah,
some people may feel in their own mind, this is their own thought that if I share this, it might sound stupid,
yeah.
or the person I'm talking to might look at me like, what in the world?
Right.
I never would have thought they would do X, Y, Z.
Yep, yep.
And then
And
you have the individuals that will feel they're already dealing with issues of self worth,
yes,
self
absolutely.
appreciation. So, because of the way they don't really value themselves, that can cause a person to hold back from expressing vulnerabilities because they're not even quite sure about the person that they are before
Yeah,
they want to share things about them to someone else.
yeah,
Those are kind of some things I think about, bro. What about you?
yeah. Man, I feel like you cover that so nicely. I think the only thing I would add is it seems like any time that we're in a close relationship and this vulnerability thing comes up, there is this underlying fear of being rejected for your thoughts and feelings. And again, I'm going to tie this to men because we are men. Um, Fear of being rejected, even if it's by your wife, like that is a real feeling. And I would say because vulnerability is not ground that we have fertilized as a gender,
Mm, okay.
it it is not easy to grow in that soil because it just has not been prepared at all, really, I think, for a lot of us. And so that just makes it extremely difficult to even want to open up. Um,
Yeah.
if you, which kind of leads into this other thought that vulnerability can feel unsafe. So it's hard to open up, and then this feeling of being unsafe with, is this person that I'm about to say these things to, will they be able to handle uh, what I'm telling them in this deep vulnerable position that I'm taking, and not make me feel like lesser of a human being or just a lesser of an individual because I'm sharing this thing.
Right.
That's
Right.
that's tough, you know,
That is tough. Yeah.
feeling like you don't have any security in this thing. So it's like if you don't feel safe, then of course you're not going to want to open up and take a chance. But that leads back to the beginning of this discussion that vulnerability is a risk. So I think it's just important to also know who we're dealing with, um, in order to know when that risk is okay to take, or at least as far as what we can tell or discern that that risk is okay. You know?
Right. So when we think about our names for this show, explorers,
Yeah,
when we look back into history for individuals that were explorers, do you feel like they had doubts about taking risk, that they had no idea how this would turn out, right?
yeah,
But
yeah, for
yet,
sure.
many of these explorers became well known, or they found something popular or made a discovery
Hmm.
because they took the risk, because they were thinking that the benefit is going to be worth the risk.
Absolutely.
So again, that's why we're relationship explorers. We're not saying we have the answers,
Right.
but we're presenting perspective
Yes.
on how we can handle our relationships. And I think most of us, bro, have shared something with someone else and been like, dang, I wish I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
it was a risk that we probably took
Yeah.
because we thought that it would be worth it. And when that happens, it will affect our trust in that particular relationship,
Yes.
but we don't want it to affect every relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, it's funny that you said that about sharing something when you wish you hadn't, because it made me think about a time when I was probably a late teen and I was working at this place, and the the boss, I had done something wrong, and the boss came and was just laying into me, and I thought it was in a disrespectful way. That's how it came into me. So I was speaking to coworkers, one of my coworkers, who was close with the boss. And I confided, I was vulnerable with the coworker because we were also cool. And I said, "Oh, I really didn't like how he spoke to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, there are ways to be constructive when someone makes a mistake. And I just didn't think his approach was very helpful or appropriate." And the coworker is getting on the bandwagon of the boss, like, well, maybe he was having a bad day, or maybe he was. And
Mm,
I said, "Oh my goodness, why did I even say anything?
mm-hmm.
Why did I open my mouth?"
Mm-hmm.
And that is really what we're talking about. How it felt like I was really kind of putting myself out there because maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm tripping, that it wasn't that bad. And according to my coworker, it probably wasn't, but I thought it was.
Right, right.
But yeah, that was just a situation that came up in my mind. I'm
Mm.
like, man, I really hate that I said anything.
It makes sense because we have to understand that vulnerability is not just about sharing information.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not talking about browsing on the internet, just getting
Right.
information.
Yeah.
We're talking about vulnerability in the sense that you're giving something to someone that they could either strengthen
Hmm.
or they could hurt.
Yep. Yep.
And that's why there's such a protective element to vulnerability.
Oh man. Which this idea just makes me think about our girl Brene Brown. She is such a monster in a lot of this stuff because she's there's an avid researcher in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And when she talks about vulnerability, she also said that same thing, that it requires more than just facts. Vulnerability, um, it really is a connection builder. It requires truth. And so she describes vulnerability as uncertainty and risk and emotional exposure, because all of those are present, which,
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with.
Yeah.
And so she says it like, it's basically what happens when I show you something real about me and I have no clue how you're going to handle that thing.
Wow. Wow.
And isn't that? what vulnerability is,
Yes, it
but
is.
that it's also why vulnerability is so important because that builds trust. When you give somebody information that you have no idea how they're going to handle it. So here's the risk, that vulnerability is a risk. But then, however they respond to said vulnerability teaches you whether or not this person is safe, whether they are
Hmm.
going to care for you in a way that you need, and all of those things. And it builds the trust. So I just
Yes,
thought that was a beautiful thought, bro.
yes. And again, it goes back to her marbles in a jar analogy. When I was growing up, I used to shoot a lot of marbles and would always be trying to go for those cat's eyes. They were kind of special.
Yeah.
But then there was a marble that we called a Donny.
Oh.
Yeah, and a Donny was about 5 times larger than the regular marble.
Oh,
And
okay.
so if you could knock a Donny out the circle and get that, that was like a big prize. Um,
Nice.
my point is, it because it was larger, the smart marble players would try to capture more marbles than trying to go for the big one.
Oh, right, right.
And I'm saying that to say we're talking about vulnerability. It's the small things that really continue to build up that trust so that a person can feel comfortable enough for that exposure.
Yeah,
And as we're
yeah.
talking about vulnerability, so many relationships they remain shallow because
Yes.
people are protecting themselves. They
Yeah,
only share the safe version
yeah,
of themselves with many people. So in sharing only the safe version,
yeah,
you're not really exposing yourself. You're not giving that person a lot of detail about who you really are or who I really am.
yeah. That's real.
Yeah.
And so that kind of goes so good into my question for you, Shu. With having said that, can a relationship be close without vulnerability? You partly answered it, I think, in what you were just saying, but to throw that question out there officially,
Here we go with those questions again.
inquiring minds want to know.
So, can a relationship be close
Yeah,
without vulnerability?
without vulnerability.
So, I'm going to default by saying a lot may depend on what an individual's idea of close is.
Yeah,
Now, for me, if I'm going to have what in my mind is a close relationship, then going back to another episode,
right,
my expectation would be that someone shares something with me that just everyone doesn't know about them.
right.
And so the vulnerability aspect also can be like those little marbles, like the more small little pieces that we share with someone.
Hmm.
I think that is going to form a bridge,
Yes,
and that bridge is all about connection. So the more little things that we share with someone about ourselves, it makes that connection stronger.
1000%.
So yeah, so in my mind, I say that vulnerability has to be a part of a relationship, and not that you're going to just go around sharing thoughts about your private life or your
Right,
secrets to everyone, but for the
right.
relationships that you truly enjoy and appreciate and cherish, vulnerability, I think, is a very important part of that relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. That connection that you get from vulnerability is absolutely how your trust can grow within that relationship. But you know what? I think I noticed. bro, what happens in a lot of relationships is that the part of us that we need the most love in is the part that we hide
Mm,
within the relationship. And if I'm just kind of spitballing this, I think a lot of that has to do with some of what we mentioned earlier, but this idea of self preservation. Even within a relationship, we are trying to self preserve, which is such an interesting thought. I'm not gonna go where my mind is thinking because it might derail me, but so many thoughts. But this idea that we are trying to just preserve ourselves, and so we don't want to take a chance on showing our wife or our husband or our friend the part that we really need the most love in, because that's just what would help us. It goes back to that fear of rejection. I think we live in a very judgmental world, and so
mm.
it's a
Oh,
fear
yes.
of judgment or even ridicule. Like how often is ridicule used in this world? You know,
Right.
it it is so a part of culture that there isn't a child that has been to public school that that doesn't understand what ridicule is. I think it is insane that throughout every generation you have bullies, you have
Mm,
people who just ridicule each
mm.
other and pick and tease and all of every person that has ever gone to public school, if you didn't get it done to you, you were the one doing it, or you were the one watching it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it has been
Right.
perpetuated throughout history, and that does nothing but stay with us in our relationships once we're out of school, once we're adults, and then we're looking for a mate, and it stays with us because all of this stuff happens in our formative years. It's just wild to think about, you know?
It is wild. And it's not like even children are trained or born with these nefarious ideas about
Right.
disrupting a person's understanding or grasp of who they really are. It's just these things are kind of cultivated in our culture.
Yes.
It's almost like it's natural,
Right.
which is why so much work has to be put into maintaining these relationships.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when individuals are afraid to express vulnerability in the area where they need love the most, it's understandable why a person may feel that way. But going back to another episode where you mentioned a lot of times we have to make ourselves uncomfortable
Yeah.
in order to grow. And growth is about understanding what the risks are.
Yes.
And so think about think about planting a seed. And since
Hmm.
Belinda and Candace have been working in the to cultivate a garden,
Yes.
I'm understanding this a little bit better.
Hmm.
Sister-in-law Joy, she's producing all this fruit.
Right.
But when you think about a seed has to grow. So we most of us think about that seed growing up to receive sunlight, which
Mm.
it does,
Right.
so that it can flourish. But we don't really think about how that seed is having to grow downward
Mm.
through the dirt,
Yes.
through the hard soil,
Yep.
looking and searching for nutrients, for water, for oxygen,
Yep.
all these things that it needs to make the growth successful.
Yeah.
And when it's growing down, it's not easy.
Yep.
it's not easy for that little seedling to have those roots going deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
But the more that seed trusts the process,
Mhm.
the stronger its roots become.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about. Trust the process of exposing yourself and taking the risk, but at the same time, guarding it so that you can still be able to love yourself,
Yeah.
but at least have the idea of, okay, growth may be a little painful, it may be a little tough, but it's going to be worth the effort.
Yeah. Man. And I'm gonna piggyback off of your illustration there with those how those roots are growing. It absolutely stabilizes the plant.
Yes.
And so this work that we're talking about doing and exposing yourself to vulnerability and all of that, that stuff stabilizes you because of the opposite when we get defensive, when we're just always trying to prevent heartbreak, you can't really receive a lot in that state.
Right.
You're nothing is going to get past your defenses, and so we really have to do this work in order to stabilize ourselves. And then if heartbreak happens, it's not the end of the world because you're stabilized.
That's right.
So the reality is that yes, bad things can happen, but here's a revolutionary idea. You can be okay if bad things happen.
Is that a revolutionary idea, bro?
Oh man.
Hey, that's a true statement though.
Yeah,
You can still be okay.
you
And
really
you will
can.
be okay.
And you will be.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that really lines up so well with what we've just been talking about that if two people show up to a relationship, bro, and the only version that they are giving each other is this polished, shiny, brilliant looking version of themselves, it's like you're you're not going to be able to get much out of a relationship if you're bringing this just polished version of yourself because I'm gonna tell you, life is too real to show up like that.
Yeah.
It's too real, and we have to do too many things, and we need to be able to be rough around the edges and help each other, grow and figure
Yeah.
things out. You know what I mean?
Going back to that illustration about the seed, just think about maybe it's not vegetation, maybe it's a flower or a plant.
Yeah.
And that seedling knows that it's got to get grimy and dirty
Yes.
to
Yes.
go through that dirt and the mud, the roots, and all
Hmm.
that. But by doing it and stabilizing itself, it turns into a beautiful plant, a
Yeah.
beautiful flower. Now it's shiny now, but it's
Right.
shiny because it went through the work.
The process.
It had to
Yes.
put forth that effort to get
Yeah.
stabilized, to get grimy and gritty,
Yep.
and to go through the mud, and that's
Yeah.
what we have to be willing to do.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Yeah.
So I think I want us to take it a layer deeper, bro.
Uh oh. We about to deal with the onion now.
Yes. We're trying to peel back a layer.
Oh man. Okay.
Yes, because I really believe that so many things start with the self.
Mm. Amen to
And
that.
right,
Hmm.
so I believe that it is very hard to trust other people if you do not even trust yourself.
Mm,
You know what?
mm. Bro, what what did we say in the other episode? The blueprint
Mm,
that we build with ourselves and our personal relationship, that same blueprint is what we're going to use when we deal with
deal with
others.
others.
So
Yes.
what you said is 1,000% true.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
thousand. So, but I cut you off. So
No, no.
I want you to delve into that a little bit deeper
Yeah.
for us, bro.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're thinking about.
So I'm thinking if we are in a situation and we can't even trust ourselves to speak up, and I'm not going to do another long, drawn out story, but when I was a teenager, closer to like 15 or 16, my manager had come in and done some yelling. I have a problem with yelling. Please don't yell at me. But he did. He came in the kitchen and was yelling, and I just did not take kindly to that. And so here I am, this 16-year-old boy, going up to my boss's office and really just having a conversation with him and standing up for myself. But I had to be able to trust myself enough
Mm,
to speak up for myself. I'm
mm,
not going to get
mm,
into the details, but it was
mm.
amazing. It was an amazing feeling even then to talk to this grown man and say,
Yeah.
please do not ever yell at me again.
Mm,
And he actually apologized, which was not in his character.
mm.
Um, but it was good. Um, we have to trust ourselves to set boundaries because if you don't have trust, you will let people walk all over you,
Oh my goodness.
and that is just a tough, tough position to be in. If you don't trust yourself, your own feelings, you will be all over the place.
That's right.
You will just be like a feather in the wind. What's that expression? Going hither and
Hither and
thither.
thither.
Hither, yes, that.
Yeah.
That's what you will be. Um, let's see. If you don't trust yourself to be able to recognize you're in an unhealthy situation that warrants you to walk away, and this is it's a little more serious than a marriage to me, but in a friendship, maybe if it's an unhealthy thing and they have proven themselves to not necessarily be trustworthy, if you don't trust yourself, you will stay in it just because we're friends, so I'm not gonna go anywhere. So I think all of those things means that if you can't trust yourself to do these things, trusting somebody else is gonna be terrifying.
Mm, 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 mm.
Terrifying.
You speak the truth, bro. Because you'll be asking yourself, because there's doubt about your own self trust. Can I trust them? Or can I trust myself to respond if something goes wrong? And again,
Yeah.
it begins with us, bro.
Yes.
We have to be willing to make those micro rep deposits
Mm-hmm.
throughout our life.
Yes, sir.
And if we're not setting a pattern of making those reps and how we trust ourselves as we mature and get older,
Yeah.
it's going to be more challenging, more difficult to
Yeah.
trust ourselves. And this, potting with you, bro, is I really enjoy it because
Same. Same.
so many things come up into both of our minds. But something similar, and I think we need to talk about this because
Yeah.
people need to understand just the value of self worth, self
Mm.
love, self appreciation, self trust.
Yes.
If we don't appreciate, love ourselves enough to protect ourselves from others, then we'll never trust ourselves to let people in. to our circle.
That's right.
So when I was a rookie at the fire department, bro, a
Yeah.
rookie, I think I was about 22 years old, maybe
Okay.
23. And the senior engineer was talking to us. I'm going to be like you, I'm going to try not to drag this out. But he was talking to a group of us rookies, and he was looking at me and kind of pointing me out of this group of like 20 rookies.
Oh, wow.
Now, first of all, it wasn't just a one-on-one situation that we're talking about in front of other people.
Right.
So he pointed me out, and I was like, why are you pointing your finger at me?
Mm,
And bro,
mm, 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 mm.
he said, come over here. And he walked me into his little office. Yeah. And he told me to close the door behind me. I closed the door, and
Right.
he began to walk towards me, pointing his finger. And
Mm,
we're brothers. And so he was yelling,
right. Right.
and I stopped him in his tracks and said, look
Mm,
here, buddy, my father doesn't yell at me. So don't you even get it in your mind that you have the right to. But Tim,
mm.
I had to love myself enough to realize you can't let people just walk over you
Yeah.
just because they have a thought in their mind. So it still is about, we need to trust ourselves and trust how we handle situations
Yeah.
when we're directly involved.
Yeah.
And the better that we equip ourselves with seeing that we can trust who we are, then the more we'll be able to allow trust, vulnerability, and these things to grow
Yeah.
within relationships.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a quick just sidebar. Do you know that I literally told my boss that same line of that my father doesn't even
Oh,
yell at me, and you
yeah,
certainly are not going to.
right, right. Like, we had an old school pops in the military and everything, but
Yes.
he can go around yelling at us,
No. No.
and I'll be doggone if somebody else is gonna be doing it.
No, sir. Not today.
Oh man.
So,
So, a lot of times it's that us asking, can I trust you, is really the real question is, can I trust me?
right. Right.
That's what the real question is.
So let's go into that a little bit. And maybe to me, what does it mean to trust yourself is to be confident in your decisions. You make a mistake and you learn and grow from that mistake. It's not that you make a mistake and you don't say, "Well, I'm never going to make a decision again." Like that's impossible. We have to make 1,000 decisions every day. And I'm probably undershooting that. So recognize that we are not perfect. We will make mistakes. And after you fall down, after we fall down, let me include myself, we dust ourselves off and do better the next time. So that's, we have to learn how to do that in order for us to continue to grow. Okay, I just had another thought, bro. And maybe this is a little controversial because I do not have children, but I really feel like I need to say this. I think it is so important for parents to allow their children to make decisions from a very young age. Age appropriate decisions, of course, but allow them to make these decisions so that as they continue to grow in themselves, they will be confident enough to make big decisions in their lives with confidence. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. I cannot tell you how many grown people now that I have run into that have expressed how they have trouble making decisions or trusting themselves. And I would be willing to say that the overwhelming majority were not able to make even the simplest decisions when they were younger, when they were smaller
Mm,
kids.
Hmm.
And so I think that's part of allowing these small humans to have their dignity is to make, would you like to wear the red outfit or the blue outfit?
Hmm.
It's a decision that they have to make.
Right.
But it just builds something in us that will really give us the confidence as we grow and keep making more difficult decisions. I, maybe
I
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get what you're saying for sure. I will definitely agree with the age appropriate matter
Yeah,
because having children and grandchildren, my perspective is a little different.
sure, sure.
Yes, but helping them to make age appropriate decisions is only going to be beneficial.
Yeah,
But that the accountability comes towards the parents.
right, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and with most parents, it's always a learning curve and,
Hmm.
getting to know yourself and your children. Because if the parents weren't in an environment that nurtured making decisions at an early age, it may be more challenging for them to do that as well. So,
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
but to, when you're in the culture of getting out of the status quo or the
yeah.
breaking the habits, breaking the culture, for
Hmm.
self growth, self awareness, for self love, then yes, you can do things like that, and
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good point.
yeah. I like that a lot. So, in this whole relationship game, what would you say is the some of the things that would damage self trust if you ignore red flags within a relationship? So you're, whether it's a friendship or maybe you're dating someone and you see some red flags but you ignore them. How does something like that damage your self trust? Your, would you say?
I think that a person would be setting themselves up to get in the culture of toxic relationships
Yeah,
by doing that.
yeah,
And as you and I know, there are millions of toxic relationships out here.
yeah.
Those aren't the types of relationships that we're talking about in this pod.
Right.
We're trying to talk about healthy relationships and growing healthy relationships.
Yeah,
So part of knowing who you are and trusting yourself is when you identify something that lets you know I'm not going to be safe, then you need to take the appropriate action
yeah,
for your self protection, for your self care.
yeah. Yep. I totally agree. Those, if you ignore those red flags in a relationship, it teaches you yourself a lot more than I think we recognize. And you're teaching other people a lot of things with whatever our behavior is. We're teaching the people who are observing us things, but we're teaching ourselves things because this brain of ours is very powerful.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
we aren't teaching ourselves and honing our skills in these relationships, then our own self is not gonna feel like we can rely on ourselves. We're going to normalize mistreatment in essence. We're gonna be teaching ourselves and others how to treat us poorly. And what a sad situation that would be.
Yeah.
So it is, I think it's just so important to um, learn how to trust yourself. And if it's, I think we keep coming back to this point of doing things in small increments. Make decisions that you can feel confident in And then you just keep building, keep building, keep building, and you'll be
We
able to
call those micro reps.
micro reps. Yes,
Yes. Yeah,
absolutely.
that's right.
So I know we have really gotten into this conversation good, and I wanted to hit another point that is close to home because I wanted to talk about people pleasing because this is something that I really did struggle with for the majority of my life. And I do believe that people pleasing also is one of those things that weakens self trust. Because what happens is we start prioritizing, our priorities are skewed. We prioritize others over ourselves. And I'm not talking about in a healthy way, this is in an unhealthy way. We're not being, it's not that the person who's a people pleaser is being selfish. They are, or I should say the opposite. Someone who is a people pleaser, they're so concerned with trying to make other people happy and do all the things, and that they're ignoring their own needs in order to please someone else. And so I think that can also really make us not trust ourselves. We will attract these relationships that are one sided. Because one thing that I think I've seen a lot of, bro, is if you are willing to give something, people are willing to take it. And
Yeah.
they will take and take and take. And the people pleaser is completely depleted emotionally, physically, financially, in a lot of cases. And so there has to be a balance of caring for people and also caring for ourselves. Because those, if you can find that balance, it'll really help you to have that trust in yourself and recognize when you're not in a good situation and you could, you know, take your leave or whatever is the healthy thing for you to do. Maybe it's not keeping this friend that has only called you when they need something specific from you. Maybe it's like, oh, you
Right.
know what? I don't know that we're actually friends. Seems like I'm just a resource,
Mm,
you know.
right.
So those are just a couple of my thoughts, bro, on people pleasing and self trust.
No, that's very valid. So a person would need to find the balance or be able to identify the trust drainers as opposed to the trust retainers.
Yes, I like it. I like that a lot.
So when a person allows themselves to please others before themselves, it doesn't mean that they don't value themselves or they don't
Right.
appreciate themselves. It's a matter, like you said, of the prioritizing.
Yes.
And a lot of times when that happens, the more a person does that, the weaker their self identity becomes.
Hmm.
And remaining true to yourself is growth in the sense that you want to make other people happy, but if we can't make ourselves happy first and foremost, well, that's not being selfish, that's called self-preservation.
Yeah.
The airplane example is always that example that comes to mind, that
Hmm.
if the airplane is in distress and the mask come down, you're told to put that mask on yourself first before you can put it on someone else.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't love the person next to you or beside
Right.
you or behind you, but you can't help someone else if you can't help yourself. That's just the bottom line.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
recognizing our own place in these relationships is important because if we do try to seek pleasing others before recognizing how healthy we are, it will dampen self trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I think that's how I would feel about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate those thoughts. Man, it is amazing how fast the time flies when we are on here potting. It's insane actually. But I did want to talk about trusting yourself without becoming closed off,
Mm,
because I do
hmm.
think that is important. Um,
It is. It is important. We have to be careful as individuals. And self trust, it doesn't necessarily look like or mean that everybody is unsafe or that
right.
everybody is safe. It
Yes.
still means that we have to do our. It's just like, if we tell my son's name is Asa, Tim's nephew. So if we give Asa some information, he receives that information, but Asa's going to do research.
Yes, he
and
is.
he
Yes, he
and he's
is.
going to determine on his own credentials
Yeah.
if this thing that we share is valid. And
Yes.
that's kind of how we have to do with this trust. We don't want to close ourselves off. We want to investigate.
Yeah. And it's very hard to live a life where everybody is suspicious
Mm,
to us. It's hard to trust anybody. Man, that's just a tough life to live. But we also can't be on the other extreme and think that everybody is trustworthy.
right.
So the great secret of life is balance.
Mm,
But I think this is where we need to use wisdom. But there's a difference between wisdom and fear when we're talking about who to trust, who not to trust. Because in my mind, wisdom, it really acts as a guide. Um, and this thing called wisdom will guide you toward growth and protection. And this other thing over here, fear, it drives you toward panic and avoidance. So I think we would really do well to lean into wisdom and think about things in a discerning way. Look at people, observe people, be open. We are going to take risk, but that doesn't mean that you're not also cautious with it. And this is where wisdom kind of helps you make the discernment between this is let's just trust everybody. No, wisdom saying, oh, this person has some really good qualities. And most of the time, people with these qualities are pretty trustworthy. So let me give them a little bit and see if that is true. That's
right.
the difference with wisdom, I think. Because fear will say, oh, I don't know, everybody is just, how do you know who to trust? And is anybody trustworthy? And, you know, you really can't avoid everybody your whole life. It's just impossible.
No, you can't, and that's why self awareness and self trust is so important
Yeah,
because when you can use wisdom, which really means that the knowledge that you have about an individual or a particular thing, the knowledge that you have about it, when you apply it to your own benefit, that's wisdom.
right, right.
So take note of what you acknowledge and use what you have accumulated in your downloads in your
Yes,
brain and
yes,
use those facts in a way that it can benefit you. That's wisdom.
yes,
When you look at a situation and you're unsure, you're uncertain, and you're moved to fight or flight, that can
Mhm.
be fear.
Yes.
So we want to encourage you to try to distinguish the difference.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So that, again, self trust is not all about everybody's safe or that everybody's unsafe. You have
Right.
to weigh the balances in between, and you use the knowledge that you accumulate, that you gather, to make a wise decision about that.
That's right. We have to observe the reality of the situation.
Right.
And if you can observe people and how they are and not panic, it really gives you a good picture of the type of people that they are. When you
Right.
can observe
Right.
people in different environments and different people and with different people and how they interact and how they engage, it just helps you gather the information and use that wisdom to know how you can move and
Right.
know what
Right.
decisions will be good for you. Very, very helpful.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now we can kind of turn it, I would say, turn it back on ourselves, bro.
Mm. Okay. So that would look something like, if someone opens up to us, how do I become safer
Yeah,
so that I can help safeguard their trust? Is that what you're
yes,
talking about?
absolutely.
Mm.
Nail on the head.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you go ahead and handle that then.
So I think that one of the ways that we can determine how we are when people open up to us is to pay attention to how we listen.
Mm. Yes.
Can we
Now,
listen? Oh
let,
no!
let, let- yeah. No, see, that's a noteworthy statement.
Mm,
I would like for you to just repeat that for myself and for our listeners.
yes, we need to pay attention to how we listen.
Mm. Preach it. Preach it.
um, and that really means when we listen, we're we're not listening to respond.
Right.
We're not listening to judge. Um, I think I said it last episode, but there's a woman named Jan Van Zant who says, "No heat, no judgment." When we
Mm-hmm.
listen, can we listen without any heat or judgment?
Right. Right.
Because no doubt there will be no one coming to or will feel safe with us
Mm-mm.
if we don't know how to listen. Don't minimize what the person is
Man.
saying. Oh, are
Right.
you still depressed?
Right.
Bro,
Right. Right.
I think we just have to be careful and mindful. And sometimes if you don't know what to do, can I just suggest that you keep your mouth shut?
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
If it's an area that you don't really know much about, I don't know. It seems like sometimes we get in this thing where we feel like we have to say something or have to respond.
Right.
And I don't know about anybody else, but there are a lot of things that I don't know. And I am not going to pretend to know. If somebody comes to me with something that I've never dealt with before,
Right.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of our other episodes, we talked about sometimes our presence alone is what is needed.
That's right.
And so a person could really feel safe and could really know that they could bring us vulnerable things and it wouldn't be a harm to them.
Yes. Beautiful.
Uh,
Beautiful.
what about you, bro? Any other thoughts you want to add to that? Or just
Um,
to this, topic in general?
yeah, no, I think you kind of nailed it. And the more that we can show ourselves trustworthy by how we respond and react, reflectively, that's going to fortify the person that we are. And then in turn, that's going to
Yeah.
help us to be able to have flourishing relationships
Yes.
because we're responding how we want someone to respond to us.
Yes.
And that helps us to be like, oh, no, that's not what they're looking for. This is what they're looking
Yep.
for. We
Yep.
have to put it into practice first.
Yeah.
And then when that friend comes to us, then we'll know how to respond in kind.
Yes. I think the point of the relationships is for it to be symbiotic. When someone can feel safe bringing things to you, then likely in return, you could feel safe taking things to this person.
Right.
We, most of us want to treat each other how we would like to be treated. I mean, unless you're just crazy. But it, we want to find those people who are of like mind and they're saying, yes, if you trust me with this thing, then I know I can trust you with my thing. And what a beautiful relationship that would be.
Right. Right.
All right. Well, we're moving right along, you guys. We're to this part of the episode where we're going to take a look at the relationship x ray. So, bro, you're going to have to grab your glasses.
Let me make that adjustment real quick.
I tuned mine up already.
Okay, there you go.
So, here's the thought for today's relationship x ray. This is just for us to look a little bit deeper into a question or a statement or a thought. Do people feel safer after opening up to me, or do they feel like they need to protect themselves from my response? That's heavy.
That is heavy. And the last portion of our discussion, we turned attention back to us, the
Right.
individual.
Yes.
So thinking about that question, do people feel safer or do they feel like they need to protect themselves? So that's going to make me examine my tone,
Mm,
my defensiveness, my willingness to listen,
yeah.
my sense of treating someone else the way I want to be treated.
Yeah.
That's really a powerful question and it deserves all the right answers because if
Yeah.
we can't make a person feel comfortable when they come to us, then how can we even open our mouth to expect that we're going to receive that?
Mm, mm,
I
mm,
don't
mm.
I don't know how that's possible.
I don't either.
So
I don't either.
that's a good X-ray question.
Yeah. And it
Yes.
and it calls for us to really again be honest with ourselves. Be honest with ourselves. And if you are honest with yourself and you know that people don't really tell you things because they know that your response is negative or you get angry or whatever the thing is, that really requires some self examination.
Yeah, and I would take it a little further and say some self-scrutiny
Yes.
because if I'm doing that, I really need to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really need to change.
And don't put it off till tomorrow.
Right.
When you know better, do better.
Do better. Facts. Facts.
Yeah. I love it.
Facts.
Well, that's the
So,
x ray for today. I love
okay.
it.
All right. That was awesome. So what's this week's rep going to be? So
Yeah.
this is this week's rep. All our listeners and viewers, we want you to ask someone close to you, when you open up to me, do I make you feel safe, heard, and respected? Now, when you lay that question on them, we do not want you to defend yourself, start making excuses. Just listen.
Listen.
Listen to their response.
Yeah.
And then And then after you ask, when you open up to me, do I make you feel safe, heard, and respected? Allow them to listen and then ask this question: what could I do better when you are being vulnerable with me? Just one rep. Remember, strong relationships are built just like strong muscles, one rep at a time. So that's our rep for the week, fam.
Yes, sir. Excellent. And we always want to have a reflection question as well, because this podcast, we're not just up here talking, we're trying to have better relationships.
Absolutely.
And so that's the whole premise of what we're doing. So, our reflection question for this episode: what part of myself have I stopped trusting?
Mm,
And how is that affecting the way I trust other people?
mm.
You
That
know,
blueprint,
that
there's that
blueprint.
blueprint again.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I think sometimes when we stop and reflect on things, we realize things are going in a way that we did not realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So that's our reflection question for this week, y'all.
That's awesome. Awesome. So we're still going to be talking about this trust thing, right?
Yes, sir.
So next time we're going to go from vulnerability to behavior.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to go next.
Because the bottom line is that once someone has damaged your trust, just saying words is not enough.
Mhm. So then we have to ask ourselves, do my actions give people evidence that they can trust me? Evidence has to be clear,
Yes.
it has to be visible.
Yep.
So that's what we have to ask. Or am I asking them to trust me on my intentions?
Mm.
Big difference.
Yeah. Huge
Evidence
difference.
or intentions.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. We have
All right.
enjoyed you guys so much. Um, this is a signing off. We just want you to remember that we're not relationship experts, but we are relationship explorers.
Facts. We're learning and we're growing, and we're glad that you're on this journey with us. So keep putting in the reps.
Yes. Take care, everybody. We'll see
All
you on the
right.
next one.
Till next time.